Thank you very much. Please sit. Mr. Master of Ceremonies, I'm happy that you referred to that rhyme about penny sausage, because I understood for the first time what they were talking about. I'm glad you gave me that lesson tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Bahamians, our friends from America and from the Caribbean region who are here, our brothers and sisters from Africa who are here, joining us on this occasion. It's a very proud moment for me to be here and to offer thanks on behalf of Prime Minister Philip Davis, who is unable to be here tonight, to our Consul General and the staff of the Consulate General in Atlanta for organizing this event and organizing all of the events which they do all year round to support the work and the life of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas in this state and the surrounding states. I'd like you to give them a round of applause. I want to remember tonight the man who was the founding Prime Minister of our country, Lyndon O. Pindling, who died on the 26th of August 2000 at the age of 70, after having served our country for 25 continuous years as Prime Minister and once again as leader of the opposition. But you know, Arthur Hanna, whose picture is outside the room, tells the story of them traveling to New York in 1965 to visit with the United Nations Committee on Decolonization. And he said that the British government asked to see Lyndon Pindling and they wanted to see him by himself. They didn't want the rest of the delegation with him. And the British government said to Lyndon Pindling, if we force the changes that you want in the Bahamas, are you prepared to take the Bahamas to independence? And so Lyndon said to them, yes, we would. And so, when he became Premier and then Prime Minister in 1967, it was determined shortly after, he and his colleagues, and you see them all out in the foyer, outside the room, that the country would become an independent country. Sadly, there were no women at the table in 1973. But tonight, in addition to remembering Sir Lyndon Pindling, I want to remember Dame Doris Johnson, who was declared this year one of the 6 national heroes of our country. And she was the head of a movement of suffragettes that began just after the general election in 1949. When her husband, Mrs. Ingram's husband, lost the election for the Ackland seat in 1949, and he came home and his wife said to him, you know, if women had the vote, you would have won that election in Acklands. She founded the suffragette movement. Doris Johnson came back home from school, headed that movement, and in 1962, women got the vote for the first time. And as you look around all the aspects of our country, we know that our country could not have been built without the work of women to support the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We've come a long way. Our country was settled in the year 1648 after the indigenous population had been wiped out by the colonial settlers. And the first settlement was in Eleuthera, thus beginning our ties with the people of Bermuda. And I want to draw your attention to something Sean McQueenie sent to me maybe 2 or 3 days ago. It is a clip from YouTube of the program which appears on PBS. And Louis Gates is the producer and presenter on that program. And in this clip, there is a review of the history of an American actress whose name, and I'm not sure this is the correct pronunciation, but Tamara Mowry. Do you know the name? Tamara. Last name? Mowry. And the reason I draw your attention to this is because in the clip, it turns out that her great-great-great-grandmother was a slave in the Bahamas when she was 9 years old, recorded in the island of Exuma. Her great-great-great-grandmother. And Louis Henry Gates asked the question, what do you think a 9-year-old as a slave would have thought about the way life was in those days and times? And that's the starting point. We have come from a country settled by slaves who were believed to be the property of other people. And we, out of that disgraceful existence, were able to craft a nation. In 1834, this coming Monday, we will celebrate the anniversary of what the British called Emancipation Day. And when they so-called emancipated us in 1834, we weren't actually free because they said we had to work for 4 more years to learn a trade and profession, and they didn't pay us. And then when they were free, the British government borrowed money to pay the slave owners, but paid us nothing. Just said, you're free. Go and do your best. And with that charge, we were able to build this nation, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Louis Henry Gates, in that same clip, was able to refer to a revolt by slaves which took place in the Bahamas, in Exuma, in 1830. The man who led the revolt was a slave named Pompey. There is a statue of him in Steventon in Exuma today. And the problem was that they were about to move the slaves against their will to the island of Cat Island. I think it was called San Salvador in those days. The name changed in 1926. And the slaves did not want to go. So Pompey led a revolt by leading the slaves to New Providence to petition the governor to say, we don't want to go. They lost that fight. They were imprisoned. They were beaten as a result of the revolt. But I tell that story also because as we grew up as children, they wanted to give you the impression that in the Bahamas, slavery was a kind of benign, soft existence. The same attempt is being made by our friends here, against our friends here in the United States, where they're trying to redefine in the history books what slavery actually was, to say that it was a benefit to the slaves. What a revolting idea. But there was a slave revolt in 1830, led by Pompey. And that was the beginning, the march to the freedom which we have in 1973. And along the way, we must pay our respects to those people who led the Burma Road riots in 1942. The throwing out of the mace, the throwing of the mace out of the window in 1965. And then majority rule in 1967. And all along, Bahamians had made their impact on this society as well. Tonight, Metellus Chipman came out and danced to the music of Tony McKay, a man from Cat Island whose song, Obeah Man, was put back into the popular culture within the last year in a movie called Nope. The man said that Tony McKay inspired that movie. And before him, there was Sidney Poitier. Remarkable story. How someone born in the circumstances that he was in 1927 as a preemie in Miami to parents from Cat Island was able to come to this society and become the first black actor to have won an Academy Award. And in this generation, we remember Fred Popol, who now heads the US PGA. So we come from people who succeed, from a fine stock. And all of us can take an example of those who have succeeded. I tell the story of Esther Roll, whose parents came from Exuma. She's buried in the Pompano Beach Cemetery in Florida. And she was the 10th of 18 children of Bahamian parents and was able to come, they moved to this country and became a success story. Tonight, I want to recognize Mrs. A.C. Williams, who I've not seen since I graduated from high school at St. Augustine's in 1970. Friends from the Caribbean came to the Bahamas, as did Lyndon Pindling's father, who was a policeman from Jamaica, married a Bahamian woman. Mr. and Mrs. Williams came. They were teachers at St. Augustine's and helped us as young people to give us a sense of confidence and pride. In 1969, there was this great debate. Can the Bahamas be an independent country? Will we make it? And now, 50 years later, the question has been answered. And Leslie and Miller Bryce is an example of that success. And Ron Pinder, and Randy Roll, and the President of the Senate is here. We are the masters of our fate. And so I want you to go home tonight with a sense of pride that we've built a great nation. Perry Christie used to say, the best little country in the world. And I repeat that tonight. So I'm a student in the United States in 1971. And there's a song which is at the top of the US charts. Can anyone guess what that song was? Funky Nassau. And that became my nickname when I was in college. But I also read a book by Zora Neale Hurston called Their Eyes Are Watching God. And as I was going through this book, they kept referring to some people who were in this town in Florida as the Saws. And I kept reading, I said, the Saws? And who were they talking about? People from Nassau. So there's a synergy, there's a relationship between the United States and the Bahamas. And you who are living here today are our ambassadors for our country. And I join with Mrs. Bryce by saying that we shouldn't regret immigration because we have to follow our own star. But there's always what Sidney Poitier says, you must always reach back and assist and help those who remain in the Bahamas. So I thank you all for coming out tonight. This is a special occasion. 50 years is a time to reflect on the past and to chart our course for the future. As I look around the room, I'll be able to go back to Nassau and report to our Prime Minister that the future looks good, judging from what I see in Atlanta. That we are a proud people, that we are a successful people, and that we mean to continue to make our mark upon the world. So tonight, as we remember all the founding fathers and founding mothers, and in particular Sir Lyndon O. Pinling, who was our first Prime Minister, let us pledge to excel in love and unity as we march forward, upward, and onward together. God bless you.
Sir, one more time for the Honorable Prime Minister. Excellent, powerful words, powerful words. We do have a special moment before we get into full celebration.